13, move to amend.
You're seconded to move to amend. We're going to count on you now. Okay, let's have your language.
Add member after SREC
Oh.
in all three places, please. Because you just gave a whole committee. Right. That just. Thank you.
Is there any objection to Rachel's amendment? Hearing none. Okay, we've got one before. You want to speak again?
And the further amend.
Further amendment.
Yeah, just to make it more clear, we just amend.
Let me, let's get it fixed. Get Rachel's amendment fixed first. Okay, we'll take your motion in this.
Remove non-voting, comma. We need a.
Keep going.
And then put a comma after district. Yeah, very good. Okay, so we need to preserve the word a or non-voting. Yeah, with the company. Yeah. Yes, and sorry. And we're removing the comma after non-voting as well.
Your amendment's out of order. Ex-official members is defined by Robert's rules have voting rights. The SREC bylaws clearly define ex-official members in committees such as the National Committee Man that have voting rights in committees. You would create ambiguity and create voting rights in an SEC that wasn't supposed to be there unless I'm reading this wrong.
The last clause tells you that this person does not have the right to vote or make a motion. It was saying non-voting twice, basically, and it just sloppy.
In order to correct it, you need to have non-voting close to ex officio to be clear that it's a non-voting ex officio. That is a real parliamentary word.
Okay.
Separating them will cause problems because they'll look up and say, an SREC member is an ex officio member. But they're not going to read the Bible.
They're not going to read the rest.
And that's,
Okay, then I will draw my motion. I think it's sloppy.
if you can fix it in that way, it would be in order. The other way is not in order.
Yeah, you can also strike, two votes or. Non-voting just once.
I think that would correct your language and satisfy you. Would there be an objection to this minor change? Hearing none, it's adopted. Okay, there we go. We had one for, do we have them against? Do we have them against? You ready for the question? All in favor of adopting this amended language, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Nay. Here we go, move it on. Have we fixed 42 already? We took care of that other problem?
Yep.
Stop, slaps, and sounds.
Go, circle back. Circle back. Circle back.
Grassroots.
Not Democrats. All right.
Let's have a look at Rule 42, make sure we did take that up. I'm sorry. Okay, where we at in this order now? Yeah, we're close to like loop on 42, so we're on to 43. Is this yours? Okay. I'll recognize you to make the motion for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, STH and Pickle. Move to amend Rule 43. I believe the language has been given to everybody already, and I'm prepared to address this if it's the same.
Second.
Oh, so you want to move to amend this language?
Yes.
I've got a second. Mr. Pickle, I recognize you to lay out your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This rule talks about people who are running for office that aren't candidates yet. Okay? And it's designed to allow the CEC or any voters to learn information about a candidate that they might not otherwise be able to get from the candidate's website or talking to the candidate's friends. Okay? The way it reads right now is a candidate for office must basically just sign on to the party priorities or the preamble, right? Principles included in the preamble. That's all they have to say. I believe in those. So they have to say that, I believe, I believe in God, I hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal, that kind of stuff. That's the preamble, right? That doesn't really tell you anything about whether they're conservative, liberal, centrist. It doesn't tell you anything about that. So, because that didn't really help us, just knowing that they believe in God and the Constitution, and we wanted to find out more about them, this amendment, and this applies to any candidate, including precinct chairs, is basically, if you walk through this with me, I'll walk in, I say, I'm gonna run for office, and they say, okay, here's what you have to do. You have to fill out this survey. We're gonna give you a copy of the RPT platform. You're gonna have to fill out this survey, and you're gonna have to go line by line in every blank and say whether you agree with it, don't agree with it, or abstain. And then you can also make comments. Then you turn that survey in with your application to be considered to run for office. At that point, the chairman, county chair, will take your survey and either require you to post it online someplace where it can be found, or he'll post it on the county's website, county RPT's website, or he'll send it to the state RPT and they'll post it on their website. So this is just full disclosure, transparency. You guys have been sitting here with me the last 3 days. Everybody that's come up to the podium, that's what they want. They want transparency, right? So this is a way to be transparent at a deeper level. It also has some new language in it about that it's not just that it may be forwarded, but it shall be forwarded. In other words, the county chair gives Jim Pickle's application, and I say no on all the platforms, but he really likes me, so he just throws it in the trash. Because right now, he just may forward it. He doesn't have to. So this is changing it to, within 10 days, they have to forward it to some website so it's public record, so people can look at it. If the candidate elects not to return their survey, then we don't disparage them or anything like that. We just basically put a line on their website, Jim Pickle, let's get the right words, Jim Pickle did not respond to the survey. That's all it says. Jim Pickle did not respond to the survey. Now, there's no transparency for that candidate, but at least we've tried. And the only way to really get it to respond would be to hold it down, torture them. Right? We get water for it and get an answer to all the complaints on the platform, but we're going to let them have an option. They can either do it or not. If they choose to do it, it gets published. If they choose not, and it's mandatory that it get published. If they choose not to do it, we just say on the website, candidate did not respond to the survey. All right? And then it gives deadlines. 10th day following the candidate filing deadline, each county chair is required to submit to the state chairman, Matt, a statement that he has complied with this rule. so that no candidate can come back later and say, hey, I didn't get the survey, I answered it. So there'll have to be some transparency for the county chair to say, yes, we did it. We did it like we're supposed to, we followed this rule, send it to the county chairman, and at least there's some accountability for the county chairman who's one filing it with the state or putting it on the website. So this is really just a little bit more, a little bit deeper revelation about what each candidate believes before they're in office. And of course, as everybody here knows, because we're trying to get to that, 44 is what we do with candidates who are already in office holders, okay? This doesn't apply to them, unless they are running for re-election. Then they're a candidate, right? So this would go into place, I guess, maybe in 2 years after, at the next, well, maybe it'll go before that. Once this rule is affirmed, I guess maybe we'll go into the next election cycle. But that's basically the gist of this amendment, is as I described.
Chair recognizes Mr. Flood. Point of information.
Point of information from the author. Does this include any language regarding judicial candidates?
Yes, it only applies to non-judicial candidates. You'll go down about 10 lines and it says request to each non-judicial candidate, read the entire platform, and it says all candidates for non-judicial offices. By the way, that language is already in the rule, so we're not changing that. And if I said every candidate, I apologize because you're right. It's every non-judicial candidate.
James, your hand was up a long time ago.
Click to speak against.
Okay, I'll recognize you to speak against unless there's a motion, interrupting motion. I'll recognize you to speak against.
Yes, sir. I think this is a suicidal motion to the Republican Party. The reason being is just I think that that much disclosure demands all the way down to precinct chair is just going to drive the party. I've seen other political groups demand this level of purity test, and those groups don't go far. And I think that it was good that we're asking that they disclose if they are receiving compensation from PACs and whatnot, but to have all the way down to precinct chair, what's your position on this? What's your position on this? I think that's absurd. And I'm much more concerned with holding incumbents accountable. Indeed, I think there's far too many faithless incumbents, and we need to do something about that. But as far as like people running for precinct chair for the first time, or Congress or state representative, I'd rather just listen to their platform and get to know the person and whatnot, and see how they do, and let the primary decide. But I think that if we get into this culture of demanding a purity test and all the things that go into this, it's way too demanding. And I think we'll dry up our party if we. So I urge everyone to vote this down.
I see 21 motion to amend. Okay, and the last sentence of the first paragraph, a candidate must return the candidate's completed platform review at the time of filing, period, and then strike the rest of that sentence. Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
And the reason I'm saying that is because if something is to be included on any material published, we're in a deep trouble. My party buys parade pins that are this big, and I can't put every candidate's questionnaire on my fan. We buy all kinds of little koozies that are this big for a canned drink. We can't put it on any material that we publish. So I'm not in disagreement that they would have to turn in their completed platform review. Perhaps someone would want to make an amendment that has to be posted on the website or something, but I just really think it's a bad idea to be included on any material that we do through our party.
Point of information. Does the chair read a candidate must return the candidate's completed platform review at time of filing to be eligible to be included as meaning the platform review is included or the candidate is included on any published intent is that the candidate won't be, you don't put their name on a push card or a slate if they don't return it. That's the intent.
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me to give you an opinion.
Maybe I asked him for an opinion, maybe that's how it works. I was asking you to interpret that language.
Are you asking me to interpret the language with the strike, without the strike? What is it? What are you asking me to interpret?
Without the strike. Because if you interpret that to mean that the platform review has to go on anything that's published by the candidate, as opposed to just their name, then that's something.
I don't think that I can determine that from that language that tells me what you're going to publish. It just tells me that I'm eligible to be published. Do we have questions or we want to debate? All right, I've got a 4 looking for an against. You're against down there. You had your hand up first. Let's go there first.
Bruce Bishop, SB2, that is not the intent. The intent is just to put the candidate's name. So that's line is saying, if they don't return it or answer it, don't put their name on there. Not the whole questionnaire and all that. Just be realistic and let's vote against this, please.
Point of information,
Second one.
would removing the comma between filing and word 2 resolve the issue, making it clear that the inclusion applies to the candidate and not to the platform review?
I'll direct that to Kathy. She made the motion.
Mr. Chairman, if the original author wants to do any amendment to that, I'd be happy to withdraw my motion. He's got some grammar cases.
I agree with her that there's some grammar issues in here and we clean up. But I think that comma is substantive in that filing. And I think he's right. I think if we take it out, then it clearly says the candidate to be eligible is to be included and not the published platform review is going to be included.
Okay, so do you want to vote down the strike and move on? So what, are you ready for the question?
I don't know. I want it to be clear. I guess I got to make later if it's not happening.
Tell me what you want to do.
Okay.
I'm going to keep going with debate until we
Okay.
exhaust that.
So if you say at time of filing for the candidate to be
so
eligible.
The only thing on the floor now is the strike. So we need to deal with that. Take that off.
Point of information.
Sorry?
Point of information.
Second point.
Is it the opinion of the chair that the same would be accomplished, that they're trying to accomplish in the stricken portion? Where they just said, the candidate was returned candidate completed that form at the time of filing in order to receive support from the Republican state or county party?
The chair is unsure what we're trying to do at this point. I know somebody wants to do something. I'm not sure what.
Point of information,
State your point.
if someone sought to preserve the original language but make sure it was clear that it applied to the candidate and not the platform review committee, would they vote against the motion to strike that language and then take up an amendment to remove the comment in between the word filing and in between the word 2, pass that amendment, and then move on?
You're trying to get me to affirm your debate, and I'm not going to do it. I don't know what your intent is, what your language's intent was. I'm not the motion maker. The quick way to handle this, if you don't think you want to deal with it a different way, is to vote this down and start over. We can go through a bunch of other votes if you like. Grace, you're recognized for one more.
Okay, so for a different reason, Kathy actually made this amendment. I'm for it because this whole thing says that every single candidate has to do the platform is really, really long. And as someone from South Texas who's busting my tail to get candidates, and we've got a lot of brand new, especially like precinct chairs and stuff, gosh, God forbid that we scared them away. Here, fill out this massive, massive platform and tell me your opinion on a lot of issues that you probably have no idea even existed as an issue. And if you don't, we're not putting your name on anything. I don't agree with this at all. Like, we get a lot of people that flip. We do. And we're just thanking making them, and we're very, very happy, and I do not want to scare them away. So saying that my county is not free, if we get a candidate who flips, to publish their name on any of our materials, if they don't abide by this rule, it's just, it limits the freedoms of our county to do what we want to do.
Johnny Carr, SB 22. While I agree, I'm going to oppose this for the reason that it needs to get fixed rather than deleted, because once it's deleted, we can't come back to it.
Mrs. Stegler, do you have a motion to withdraw?
I will withdraw my motion.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any objection to Mrs. Stegler withdrawing her motion? Hearing none, will withdraw and strike. I'm going to recognize the original amendment author for an amendment first.
Once we get that unstruck, let's see. I thought it might be ambiguous, but I will clear it up.
Okay.
Candidate must return the candidate's completed platform review at the time he files. Candidate.
You want to have a period at the end of the file.
And then I want to say, time file. Take the comma off.
We're back on the motion maker's original language, so let's fix the way he needs to say it.
Time of
Take
filing.
it back.
In order for the candidate's name, in order for the candidate to be eligible to be included, no, it's already there, to be eligible to be included on any material published by Republicans saying this guy's a Republican. We're supporting him when he's Republican. So that language is now correct.
Okay.
Clear up.
We'll go back and treat that as a new amendment without objection. All right, now let's start this process over. Now, if you want to speak on this, I think, okay, I'll recognize you to speak on it.
I think a lot of people will read this type of thing as a parade of horribles. It's going to scare candidates away. You know, I can make a similar argument that if I decide I'm going to be a brand new precinct chair, I'm not really sure what it is. If I have to go through the platform, at that point I say, wow, I agree with this. I'm even more of a Republican than I thought. Or, nah, I'm not really a Republican. Maybe I shouldn't be a precinct chair. As opposed to just scaring them away. Because if going through the platform and agreeing or disagreeing with the platform planks scares them away, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And if they can't spend an hour to have a 2-year job as a precinct chair where they're going to be promoting Republican principles, if they can't spend an hour going through the platform and learning what we as Republicans, remember the we, who are we? If they're a we, that they want to be part of us, then I don't think they should be a precinct chair. And you want good precinct chairs. You just don't want bodies filling those seats. You want people that are Republicans, that are willing to say they're Republicans, that are willing to put it on online. I'm a Republican, this is what I stand for. It's like public baptism. I mean, get baptized in public so that everybody knows you're a Christian. Same thing here. It's just kind of a Canada baptism. For the Republican Party. Now you get to call yourself a Republican.
Oh, my goodness, there's so many hands, and I was looking down, and I don't know that's right there.
I think I saw Rachel's first.
I saw Rachel's earlier, Chris, too. We'll go to you, Rachel.
Thank
For
you.
or against?
Against. Rachel for SB 13. Mr. Pickle, this is a great idea in concept. I think this is a wonderful idea. I really want us to stop and pause because yes, you're giving candidates a job to do, but you're giving county chairs who filing entities and the state chair filing entities for multiple primary candidates a task that could make it look like they're favoring one candidate over another, which is not permissible. So if there's multiple primary candidates and one candidate fails to return the survey and the party has to publish this candidate failed to return the survey, but another does, that is the party, the filing entity taking action against one candidate over the other. Favorite, it could be perceived as such, especially by the person who doesn't do it. And I feel like this is opening us up to some kind of challenge. I think it's a good idea and concept. I think this is exactly the kind of area where we want to give it to the SREC to workshop. Scott Bowen's word. Because it's a good idea, but the execution of it needs a lot of work and a lot of time to think about, much more than we have here. My final point here is this. I have been asked every time we say we're going to put something on the website, any website, we're going to make people put stuff on the website, it must have an ending time. Because that's why when we look at our state website, it's overrun with information. So if you direct anyone to put stuff on the website, it must have a finale as well. So those are my points about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Terry Leo Wilson from SD11. I like it. This rule is already in place. We're just kind of fine-tuning it. This is already language that is currently there. The reason I like it is I'm speaking from a candidate's heart as well. I've been a precinct chair, SREC, I like it. I won votes actually over stuff like this because I filled out the iVoter Guide, which is 14 pages, 10 questions on each page. Josh, you know, I mean 2 paragraphs in detail of how you feel on issues. I went to several candidate forums. My opponent didn't do any of them, and he got that response. Candidate did not fill out the survey because they had the deadline. And I had people that already were excited about my campaign because they agreed with my answers. Or they didn't want to vote for me because they disagreed. But most were like, I appreciate that. I appreciate the time that you took. It does tell something about the candidate. I think that's important. And if the candidate, other one chooses not to fill it out, that's not hindering them in any way. That's not forcing them or discouraging them. They just choose not to fill it out. That's their prerogative, and then that statement will just say, did not respond to the survey. I do think it's also important to look at it from the aspect of the SRC on candidates committee. You have some concrete answers of how this person feels. It's not choosing sides, it's the candidate's own words.
State your point.
I have a question. Do we have a definition of how many of the planks someone has to agree with 100% before they become a Republican?
There's no possible way I can answer that. James has been popped his hand up several times. Are you here to speak against?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll recognize you for that.
Again, my
You're
problem
going
is,
so fast. I'll come to you next.
if anything, I take issue with a lot of incumbents. But people running for Congress or precinct chair or county chair for the first time, like, they're not my issue. And because they're elected for the first time, it's easier to get rid of those people. I think we're too deep, otherwise I would make a move to amend the amendment to put incumbent candidate in front of every word, because I think incumbent candidates are the problem here, not first-time candidates. We're having a real hard time, but we're always working on it, and that's why earlier in this committee, we moved up the Candidate Resource Committee to higher up on the agenda, because we need to prioritize our ability to recruit candidates. And we're trying like heck to expand our presence and success in regions of Texas that are currently blue. And we just like recently won a huge race in South Texas. I want to promote that. I think you'll see people, once you get somebody who won in a blue district, a lot more people will start to become more red, and they'll become more open-minded and to the rest of the platform in time. And when I'm looking at any particular race and the variety of candidates running in the primary, I do take note of who is taking positions on several issues and who's playing it safe and milquetoast. And even if I'm a friend of that person and I'm hoping that they win, I'll tell them, I don't think you take enough positions. I really like you to, my district is blue, and I'm trying to advise my friend running for county commissioner. It's like, you need to run like you're an underdog and you're going to lose unless you throw Hail Marys and take positions. But if you don't take positions, so I tell them this is what you should do. Be transparent about where you stand on things. But anyway, I encourage everyone to vote it down.
Thank you. We're getting trying to drift past that 2 minutes. Let's try to hold to that. Mr. Bishop, I recognize you to speak for.
Bruce Bishop, SD2. Guys, most of you all been around. Grassroots are begging for this. All we're trying to do is fine tune it and give them what they want. We're not, well, actually to Ms. Hooper's Hill, we are showing favoritism. We're going to favor a candidate that tells us more about themselves and where they are on positions in our party versus someone that doesn't tell us anything. That's not unjust favoritism. We're going to vote for someone we know more about. Let's talk about, well, I'm not worried about first-time candidates, I'm worried about incumbents. You want good incumbents? You want to weed out bad elected officials? Start by learning more about them when you're first running for office. If we weed them out before they get in there the first time, we're not going to have to fight incumbency and all the lobby money they've gained in war chest. Let's be real about this, guys. If you're really against it, vote against it. But if you're not, let's get the grassroots and what we should want from our candidates at our party. Thank you.
I recognize you, Dwayne, for final against.
Dwayne Wright, ST5. I'm against this, for the idea that I'm against this amendment. There's a fatal flaw in it. When a county like mine puts out a sign that says, all right, you've had enough yet, vote Republican. That sign is promoting a slate of Republican candidates. Would I have to put vote Republican except for this guy because he didn't meet the standards of this rule? No. I would be in violation if I put that sign out with this rule the way it is right now. So it's got a fatal flaw. I mean, it's just on the side, I get what we're trying to do for the grassroots, but on the side of the actual mechanism of making it happen, this would be a horrible mess.
Okay, debate being exhausted, all in favor of adopting this language, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Nay. Nays have it. This amendment fails. Let's move on. Yes.
I'm the only one. Mr. Chairman, I rise to make an amendment to the may and shall.
We just killed the whole thing. We're moving on.
The whole thing.
On. Said bye.
Okay. Well, let's see, then I don't talk.
Somebody said grassroots.
I got yours. I got two.
Okay. One more.
Stage point.
Can you went back up to the language that we just went through? Okay. The strikeouts, double strikeouts are what we struck out. The other stuff is underlined. Is that an indication that that's the original amendment? Is that what you're, and we shot down?
This language was presented, it's sitting as was presented, as was amended to the amendment. We accepted the amendment to the amendment. We were back up to the main question. The main question was defeated, therefore we're done with this document.
Thank you. I forgot so many things back and forth. I thought it was still amended.
So, point of information, I'm sorry, Rule 43, that isn't changed at all?
No.
Okay.
Back up to the original language.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you proposing another amendment to Rule 43?
Mr. Chairman, the second Rule 43 is much more limited. Down about 4 lines from the bottom, the line that starts recorded by the filing entity and may be published is being changed to and shall be published. So that's back to the original 43 language. You know, the motion here is just to strike out may and add shall.
Okay. So there's a motion to strike may and add shall in Rule 43. I'll recognize you for that striking out.
Okay, this is sort of a non-favoritism provision, okay? Because if you read this sentence, it says that the candidate's responses, by the way, they have to give us responses still, shall be collected and recorded by the filing entity and may be published on the filing entity's website prior to the primary. Okay, so this county chair collects from 3 candidates these surveys, and he decides, well, I'm going to publish this one and not these 2, because it's a may for him. It's not mandatory. The filing entity doesn't have to publish them. It's a may provision. So he may choose candidate A and may not choose candidate B. This just says, shall, they have to do it. If you return a survey, it's got to be published. So there's no favoritism by the filing entity. That's all this does.
Okay. You're against? What's that? She's been back to go like this.
So District 31, Mary Kay. I love the concept, but here's the problem. So this is a Rule 43 that's been in effect. I, as a county chair, have never been told to do this. I'm not directed by the Secretary of State, nor by the Republican Party of Texas. And then the process of a candidate, they get their information either from the county clerk to file, some get it from me, and then some just take it straight off the Secretary of State's website. So I think there's a lot of work here that still needs to be done on the process. And where this platform is going to originate from. I do take the file. But for me to say I'm going to give them the platform, I don't even know they're going to run it on sometimes until the filing date. So I think there's a lot of information missing out of this that we need to address.
Point of order. Doesn't this amendment conflict with the last sentence of this rule?
It does create ambiguity the way I see it. When you say shall, the executive committee at your discretion can commit. That's why the main language is in there.
Agreed. So can I make a motion to amend? Or can I just make a motion on may and shall right now?
Make it, let's see how you do it. I'm interested to see how you're going to do one word strike.
Strike out the last sentence.
Strike the last sentence.
Strike the last sentence. At that discretion.
That is out of order at the moment because you've got a strike in a strike and add. That's the only thing that's on the floor. We have a hard time amending that. The point of order is well taken to sustain this amendment can't go forward.
Point of information.
State your point.
He could go ahead and remove his suggested motion and rechange it, correct?
At the point where past filing deadline, or 2 hours to go, we've got to take these amendments as they're written to just open this up and debate everything in the language that is not pre-noticed and be completely out of order. As this amendment, as it's presented, is out of order, we need to move on.
So we can't clear the ambiguity.
Well, we can't clear the ambiguity because it's not in order to mess with the other language. Your motion is just to strike an and. There's no vessel now at this point for us to then go in and create ambiguity in order to modify another part of the rule. If you're passionate about this, I would submit it as an amendment rather than the permanent committee to give you the bid. Take your point.
Mr. Chair, so if I were to make would I be out of order if I made a motion to strike out, return to make, and at the end of that sentence put something like, if the filing entity chooses to publish any responses, he or she must file all responses.
You'd be out of order for that, because the only thing we're talking about is strike may and add shall. And we can't create ambiguity with our motion and then use it as a vessel to correct the ambiguity by doing something else. That's past the scope of the amendment.
Thank you.
Is that your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Move on to the next one. A. We know who's laying this out. Commissioners. Chair recognizes Jim Pickle to lay out amendment 43.
Thank you, SDE. Rule 43A talks about preparing a list of.
Well, we've got a motion to lay out 43A. Move an amendment. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Sexton, I recognize you to lay out your amendment.
I believe this is not inconsistent with the 15 language of the 15 principles that then go into the platform, but this is really talking about the preamble of the platform. So it's different. It says the platform committee gets to pick 10 to 20 principles to be included in the preamble, which clearly define the party's values. And it says it strikes out with the knowledge and purpose, because that's redundant. That's the only reason you would be doing this with knowledge and purpose. That they be used to summarize our mission statement, period. Canon must return the completed platform review and the completed Canon Resource Committee's funding application by certified mail. And the reason we do certified mail is because we don't want he said, she said, I gave it to you at the meeting and put it in your back pocket stuff. We've got a track record, paper record of it being produced or exchanged. To be eligible to receive funds from the SCRC or the S3C. So this is not a stick. This is a carrot. If you follow this rule, you are now eligible to receive money, which is our power as a party, or one of our powers. So that's what this is for.
Anyone wish to speak against this amendment? Anyone else? Anybody else?
Anybody else?
It's turning really red now.
I'm just.
It is hot.
Mr. Chairman, Justin Nichols, SD 26, I rise in opposition. One, I think that the idea of certified mail is a little onerous and cumbersome upon most people. The truth is, most people really do not and have never sent a certified letter to anyone. I would propose, I guess, may I make an amendment for the chair and entertain an amendment?
If it has to do with the amended language, I can accept it.
Just, I would
to be fair, sir, you rose in against, and you're making the amendment out of rising against, so that would be out of order at the moment. We'll finish your debate. And I've had others being recognized before.
So I simply do not believe that certified mail would be required to have an otherwise qualified and good candidate to receive funds and support from the party. So I would be in opposition adding that further restriction.
Stage one.
Does the current CRC application process require, I can't remember, an input from the county chair and or their SREC rep to be submitted? I believe it does.
On that as well.
It's either the county chair or one of the SRECs.
County chair or SREC.
Okay.
Speaking for. Sorry. Against. I don't have an against available. So the ones that I saw that were going to be recognized for, I don't see them now. So I'll recognize you for your amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I would move then to amend the amendment by striking the word by certified mail and adding words in writing.
Is there a second to this amendment? Second. We don't feel the love at all. Is there objection to this language? You object to this language? I'll recognize you as the first. Do you have a question?
I have a question.
Okay, I'll ask your question first, and I'll recognize you as the first.
It's not on the amended language, it's on the, it's not called. It's saying no more, no less than 10, no more than 20, but there's only one paragraph of the preamble. We don't have between 10 and 20 to choose from.
It's not principles, not preamble.
I understand principles, but that says preamble.
The principles in the preamble, the top principles are typically considered part of the preamble.
And there's only 12. Just like.
Okay, not sure what your question is. I'll recognize you speaking.
So if we're worried about the usage, that there's a lot of ways to fix that. Most of us email everything to verify if we recorded it. We can fax it. We can even do a physical comfort of our own home without having to go to the post office. So I think that's not a but anyway, so I would say in writing would be satisfied the concern that he said, she said.
Thank you. Are you against this amendment? Okay.
Yes, Janice Holt, SD3. I get it, I understand what he's saying, but it's not that big of a deal to do certified mail. I do certified mail all the time with my business for that very reason, so that I know exactly when it's gone and exactly when they receive it. I have proof, and that's what this was intended to do in order to make sure that they can't do the he said, she said, I never sent it, you never got it, whatever. So I am against this. Thank you.
I saw two hands go up. Rachel, I think you got one first.
Rachel Cooper, SC13, point of information.
State your point.
Who receives the funding application?
Those are, if I understand them right, they are sent to the CRC. I believe the chairman of the CRC, where they actually go, whether it is Austin or to this house, I don't know. Do you know, Janice?
I believe it goes to the party and then is disseminated to the committee.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, but I don't think it's time to, we have to, it's a motion to amend, but we're already.
We're on the highlighted lane.
Yeah, no,
any other questions? If I may, the certified mail was requested, I don't remember exactly when we got it inserted, but it was there was problems with emails being lost, there was problems with mail being lost, and candidates saying I was unfairly considered for money from the CRC because of it. So the certified mail option was adopted so that there was a return receipt, that there was no question that their application got sent and it was signed for. The CRC brought this language to the Rules Committee in the year it was adopted, I don't recall which, and asked for that language specifically to conduct their business, just as some information while you deliberate.
What information, then why wasn't it added at that time?
I remember it being in there. Did you strike it and put it back in?
No. The certified mail, this survey says on the form, sent it in by certified mail.
Yeah.
So I'll just do it and say you can't.
I maybe remembered as it was added to the form, and this would make it consistent with the form. If you change this, we're going to have to reprint forms, so, and they're all crazy. You are creating some ambiguity with this amendment, and thinking about that, it's not out of order, it's not in conflict with the rules, but it would cause a burden on the party to reprint the forms. I'll ask you a question. I'm sorry?
I knew you were fix that. I'd like to propose an amendment to the amendment.
We're already
in the yellow? Oh, you're TV? Sorry.
Yeah, the highlighted language is the only thing we can affect at the moment. Anything else? Do you want to continue with this? The motion to withdraw would be in order. If you want to go back, or you want to take a vote on this.
I thought it belonged to the body. I didn't
Anybody that makes a motion has got the right to a motion to withdraw, and by a vote, they can withdraw. It doesn't belong to the body. I can also ask that without objection. So if you'd like to withdraw, I apologize. I didn't explain that to the head of the committee here. That is a process. That is a procedure.
Right, well, if there's no objection, then I'll.
Okay, you want to withdraw, is there objection to withdrawing of this amendment to the amendment? Hearing none, we'll withdraw that. I'll recognize Ray for an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would strike the words "that they be" on the fourth line. On the fourth line.
We'll get there. Okay, we've got a motion to strike that they be. Is there a second?
Oh, sorry, add a comma for values.
My apologies. There's a comma there.
Okay, sorry.
Is that your language? Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Gonzalez?
Oh, okay, so it just didn't make any sense to me when I read it. Creating defines party values that they be used to summarize our mission statement. By striking this, it tells us that the party's values are used or are already used. That's how we use them to summarize our mission statement. So I think it just reads more clearly now.
Is there any objection to this amendment? Any objection? There being no objection, we'll accept it amended.
I'm sure there's also a grammatical thing. I think with the, I'm sorry, maybe sure.
Give me a second. Let's get through this correct. Just strike it out.
Sorry for nitpicking.
Just leave it strict because that's part of I'll recognize you for that.
At the end of mission statement, put the period on inside the podium.
I think we can accept that without objection. Okay. Any, we had one for and one against on the main question. Kathy, did you still have a question, Tom? We got you straight. Okay. Anyone wishing to speak on or against this amended language? You ready for the question? All in favor of adopting this language signify by saying aye. Aye. Those nay. The ayes have it. The amendment carries. This yours? Keep on, Members, I'll remind you that this committee burns to the ground at 11 p.m. Keep that in mind. Mr. Malone, I'll recognize you for an amendment.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move to amend rule number 44, censure process and penalties, to add the underlined language after rule number 43A, or to the legislative priorities adopted at the most recent state convention as described in rule number 34C.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Yes, second.
Second, I'll recognize you to speak on your amendment.
All right, so at the very beginning of this committee, 2 days ago, we had a little bit of discussion about the three-tiered system for what we completed this convention. We have principles that every Republican is basically expected to align with in order to even call yourself a Republican. And they are timeless, and they are not often changed. And then we have a platform which is exhaustive, encyclopedic, and nobody on earth is going to agree on all 350 issues that are in it. And so it's not something we enforce. It's intended to be an answer to questions that could come up. But then we have legislative priorities. And that's the third level of our process. And legislative priorities are a few issues that we pick out as a matter of strategy to align on as a party as we go into the next legislative session. And so legislative priorities are where we are trying to move the ball down the field. If you have a football team, you want everybody moving in the same direction. If someone's going backwards, if they're carrying the ball in the wrong direction, then they're not being a good teammate. And so if that happens repeatedly, then that needs to be part of our process for holding our elected officials accountable. So my amendment is not about whether this process should exist. It's not about what the penalties should be. It's not about what the process should be for getting to them. It is just acknowledging that legislative priorities should be included as part of the guidelines for moving toward a motion to censure, or really any kind of process that exists. And so that's why I offer this language, and I encourage you to vote for it.
Point of information.
Stage one.
The word either in 2 lines above that, I believe is a part of this amendment because it is not in the original language, and that word is also needed to make this phrasing work. So I think
That's correct. I believe I did that in. So that needs to be underlined.
to the original. So either in opposition to either.
Yeah, but the lawyers didn't even catch that.
I'm rubbing off.
Chair recognizes Dwayne White to speak against.
Is it appropriate to amend?
Would be appropriate.
I would like to, do I have to amend just the underlying area, or can I amend other sections?
All that's available to you is the underlying language.
Can I save my powder for later? This right here, I was want to speak to that. Sorry.
Well, this amendment laid out is only going to be the underlying language. There wouldn't be that room for any other amendments. This amendment. You had your hand up next.
Speaking for.
Speaking for. Do we have someone speaking against? No one to speak against. Debate is exhausted. All in favor of adopting this language signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Nay. Language is adopted. Yes.
I'd like the motion to amend.
There's not a motion to amend. The language was adopted. We're going to set this rule aside to see if there's any other rules that would substantially affect this amendment.
That's what I'm talking about.
You have another amendment?
Yes, rule 44, yes, sir.
Okay, well, when we get to yours, I'll recognize you. We're scrolling down right here in order to submit it. Is this, that's correct, is this substituted language for Rule 44? This is so substantial, it doesn't appear to be an amendment. James, it looks like it's a full substitution. I want to understand what it is you're trying to do.
Been working, I've been in cohorts with, thank you. I've been in cohorts with members from the grassroots and folks who've been sending me like their drafts, and they got this one in perhaps at before the deadline, and I've got like improved language since then. I can work off this language, but if I could use more updated language, I prefer to use that. I can go from whatever language I can be permitted to use.
James, I want to give you an opportunity to present it, but I don't see your strikes, adds, or what your amendment is doing. I just see language is how you want it to read. We can't work on that. Do you have a properly filed strike to amend language?
Do you have how many Red Rule 44 submissions did you get from a Mr. Bill Eastland?
There's no telling. And he's watching too because he's messaging me. I got two separate emails from Bill Eastland. One contained Yeah, and he's got an amendment that's, 2 down on the list from yours. Take a look here real quick.
I think I saw Amy Hickey's submission right below it. I'll take that one up or.
Well, I mean, the problem is that this submission is out of order in accordance with the committee rules, says the proper strike and add language is not there. It's going to be hard to.
It's not the right format. It's not the right format.
Thank you. Let's move down. 44 submitted by Amy Hedke.
Not the right format.
You know that.
I didn't read the rules.
What? Are you kidding me?
Not kidding.
We'll fix it. The certified mail thing has been removed from the forms.
Well, you are not vindicated.
Well.
We'll take care of that.
All right, point of information, Mr. Chairman.
He's red again.
I know.
Okay, let's get back to it. James?
I'd like to move to reconsider our procedural rules just so that I can send you the version that I'd like to introduce before the council.
Let's, I tell you what, let's get your language put together, submit it, and then make your motion if the body wants to accept that as, you did notice it. You just didn't properly notice it because the language wasn't submitted right. So let's move on and we'll, you want to reconsider now? There's nothing to reconsider. Well, we can take that now. A motion to reconsider to get this language correct would be in order for you. Would you like to make that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of his motion to reconsider to fix his language, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay?
Nay. Division?
I'm sorry. The ayes have it. All in favor of allowing him to fix his language, let's raise your hands. All opposed? The ayes have it. Actually, you know what? I gave you the wrong one. That would just be a motion to suspend the rule, the submission rule. Is there an objection that we got the votes to let him fix his language? Hearing no objection, get your language fixed. Let's move on to the state your point.
If you allow one person to do that, will we be allowing everyone that didn't submit it properly that same courtesy?
We allowed a motion to suspend the rules. You have the opportunity. Let me finish, please. You have a motion to suspend the rules anytime you'd like to try to make it. He was able to garner 2/3 to fix his language that he submitted. If you want to try to make a motion to suspend the rules to allow something else, you're well within your rights to do that, and this body can either approve. Does that answer your question? Okay. But we need to move on. If the clock runs out, and James, the clock runs out on you. Let's go down.
Aye, sir.
That's not properly submitted. Okay. Bill Eastland's is going to be properly formatted. Rule 44 submission by Bill Eastland is carrying this. There we go. You both spoke at the same time.
You go for it.
Now you both.
No.
I'll take it. You two must be alone. All right. Got a motion to adopt a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Point of information.
State your point, sir.
Could you scroll down just so I can see the entirety of that? That might be the language that I was going to send you. Oh, please, thank you. That's
was.
Yeah, there's one sentence off, that's,
You're within your rights under the suspended rules to submit it. If you don't, by the time the clock runs out, we'll just consider that you didn't make it. All right, we've got a motion and a second. I recognize you to speak on the motion to amend.
So this gives 44 some teeth. Something I'd like to quote from my greatest mentor, political mentor, is liars lie and cheaters cheat. And that's exactly why we're doing this. There are people that are in our party that would like to take advantage and run for something that they don't necessarily agree with. And I don't think that's right for us. You're going to hear all kinds of arguments against this, Democrat boogeyman and things of that nature. While they are a threat, I do believe that having Democrats in our own party that call themselves Republicans is also just as bad. So this would actually bolster this rule and give it some teeth that I do think it desperately needs in order for it to be successful. Because without it, as we received testimony earlier this week, it is a rule without teeth. This needs some teeth. We don't want we don't want our elected officials just getting slapped on the hand anymore. So we want some real repercussions for their actions because they're giving us the teeth. I don't want to get the teeth anymore. I want us to have the teeth. There's more of us than there are of them. That's the point of this. The idea here is that we be the party that we say that we are. Thank you.
Chair recognizes William White to speak against.
2 minutes.
10 minutes. Motion 10 minutes.
Joint Writing C5. I move to amend by adding language on section number 2 at the very last sentence. When the one where it stops at SREC. Right before it hits, yeah, right there. Inserting the language, provided the censure expenditure does not reduce.
That amendment would be out of order as you're now modifying language not recognized in the motion to amend.
I thought we were going, this was the whole language.
Yeah, we're dealing with this language. Again, if we open this whole thing up to amend, we'll wind up writing the rule. We're only dealing with the moved amendment. Do you have an amendment for the striking ads that are written?
Yes, I did. At section B, prior to the last sentence, insert these words, right after that period, right there. Provided the censure expenditure does not reduce the Republican Party of Texas operating funds. Oh, I'm sorry. Too far. Does not reduce, yes, the Republican Party of Texas operating funds below a threshold of 12 months overhead.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. Below a threshold of 12 months overhead in the general operating fund period.
what was the last one?
Operating fund period, that's it. There we go.
Let's get that highlighted. Is there a second? Got a second.
Should that be a comma there? Yeah.
Right, correct, I'm sorry. Yes, that's correct.
language, Frank?
Yes, yes.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. I'll recognize you as
Yes, we talk about spending money on lawsuits quite often, and I'm protective of the RPT's operating fund and ability to move forward in that way. So that's why this amendment is here. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Basically, before again. I'll recognize you for that.
Rachel for SD 13. This morning at 2:28 a.m., Elon Musk tweeted this: I voted for Myra Flores. First time I ever voted Republican. Massive red wave in 2022. That is our goal. And I'm against this amendment, but I'm against the entire, all of these amendments here, not against Rule 44. Bringing amendments like this, obviously it's a poison pill, but the problem with this amendment is how much does a censure expenditure cost? Who is going to pay for this cost? How do you know? So this language, I'm against it because it's vague, and I understand what the intent here is, but I'm against this language because it is vague, and then I'm happy to speak on the entire amendment.
Okay, do we have a fourth? Anyone wishing to speak for this language? I'll speak for it.
Matt Long, Senate District 24, and the frustration we have as GR workers, that's grassroots. Does that happen? Great. Grassroots that we have, that we get up to the Capitol and get laughed at when we bring the priorities to the platform. And I could name you the names of representatives and senators who have said to us, I don't pay any attention to the platform. I don't care what the platform says. Two sessions ago, we went in towards the end of the session, and I, on my own expense, printed copies of the platform of the Republican Party. And I took them office by office in a brown. Each one of them had a big envelope with a note on the front, just reminding you, you may have missed this, and I just want to see if you've gotten, because we haven't gotten to any of the priorities yet. And so we took those in, and listen, we were laughed at, and in most of the cases where we were in there with staffers, they would laugh and say, are you kidding? So-and-so doesn't even, they're not here to do that. They're not here to serve the Republican Party. It's one of the things we got. We're not here to serve the Republican Party. I'm here to do whatever my constituents want me to do. And the argument I keep trying to make is you ran within a framework of the Republican Party. And so when you go to your constituents and say, I want the magic R by my name, you ran within that parameters of the Republican Party. And that's what people believed when you went to them for their votes. And so for them to come to us and say, when we go to the Capitol and we're in their offices, and for them to say to us, look, we don't pay any attention to the platform. And I started doing the math on this. It is literally over tens of thousands of man-hours put into our platform. If you started every single person at the level, this, and then to be ignored and chastised the way we are up at the Capitol and laughed at for even bringing this up. And if we as a Republican Party want to that name to actually mean something, then the people who represent us up in Austin, they must adhere to the priorities, and they must, I insist that they fight for them, not just agree with them, but fight for them. And out of the other 3,000 other planks, I've told them, I don't care which ones you disagree with me on those, but those priorities, tens of thousands of man-hours are into those. We're very, very serious about that. And for you to ignore it and not even bring it up, it is so frustrating. So I'm begging everyone at this table to please make Rule 44 stronger, put teeth in it. Thank you.
Recognize SB18 to speak against.
I understand, this is Chuck Beers, SB18. I understand all that has been said, and I don't disagree with the yellow highlighted area if it was up in Rule 2. However, the highlighted area to me concerns me as a county chair. And if I end up following this rule and am the subject of a lawsuit by any party, and I don't have a 100% guarantee that RPT is going to pay any legal expenses for me, I guarantee I will not follow this rule because I'm not going to put my livelihood, my house, and my assets on the line for this.
Anyone wishing to speak for this language? Kathy?
Senate District 21, and I have to refer to number 2 above, where they can spend up to 12% as a party's general fund. If someone's been censured, I did ask the executive director and found out that the party's general fund varies from 1.4 million to 2.5 million. I'm sorry, 1.5 to 2.5, depending on if it's a election year or non-election year. So let's just say in the 2-year period, it would be 4 million. We're going to spend 12% of $4 million, $70,000 to keep a Republican from getting elected again. That is why I am speaking for this language, because it says we're not going to spend tens of thousands, yea, hundreds of thousands of dollars of the party's hard-earned fundraiser. If they quit calling me, it would be helpful. But they work so hard to get the money. I do not want the party to spend up to 12% of this money. And especially, look, if we were having trouble before this convention, not sure if we were going to be able to do plank-by-plank voting, before we could figure out how to spend $20,000 for a Scantron, the party is not in a position to be paying for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for censure lawsuits. We need this amendment.
You against?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
John Carr, SB 22. The reason why I'm against this is not because I don't like the language, but because I don't think it's going to work. The reason why I say that is if the county chairman follows the rule, any good lawyer that is going to represent anyone against that county chairman is going to say he is the agent of the party, and the party is on the hook. So whether we say, we're not going to pay any more than that or not, then the chairman who is being sued could also counterclaim against the party for that additional money. So this, while it's a good idea to have those words in there, they ain't going to work.
Debate being exhausted on the amendment to the amendment. All in favor of adopting the highlighted language signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Nays have it. It fails. Let's take that back out. Really? I love you, Liz. I thought you said, can I ask for the vision? Okay, we're back on the amended language. James?
Mr. Chair, this language is pretty close to ideal, and I'd like to make an amendment to this just to match it with. I'd like to make a motion to amend the first line of Part B and strike and replace.
Okay.
So, starting with the word any county chairman and ending with the word following the above rule, strike. And add new language. And I'll read it out.
You're your language is gonna go right there.
Right there, yes, sir. Any capital new sentence, any county chairman who applies the provisions of section A1. Sorry. Section A1, or rejects an application.
Whoa, applies the provisions of
A1, they're both in parentheses, A parentheses, 1 in parentheses. Provisions of section A1.
You mean 40?
Yep. A1 of Rule 44. So there's A1 and there's whatever's grammatically correct.
Just let's put A1 and
That works.
And you want B1 as well?
That'll be mentioned soon.
Okay.
Or rejects an application for a place on the ballot under section A2. You do 44A2. And thereby becomes the subject of a lawsuit for doing so. That is the replacement language. It continues on. Oh, comma. Anyway. If you would end it in a, for doing so, comma on this one.
Point of information, sir.
State your point.
Can you please enlarge that?
Can you? I'll try. Let's get the language right. I don't want to ask her to do anything else. Let's get his language right, and then I'll try. Sorry. There's nothing to pull out of order yet. He's trying to make his motion, members. So
Would you ready for a little bit more? If you would add section to 44A1, just so that they're consistent. Provisions of section. Yes, thank you. And, yeah. That's it. That's the striking in place.
Okay, there's the language. Is there a second?
Point of order.
State your point.
In the instance of a censure, it is the TEC that decides, or the SRC members that decide. The county chair and the state chair in a case of censure is only they're only dealing with the application or a checkbox on an application. They're not the person that made the
I need you to
decision.
state your point of order. You're debating and commenting on the language.
It is out of order because it's because the wording is county chairman. It should say the organization.
I don't have a valid point of order for you to make. I don't understand what you're trying to say.
The county chairman is not the one that made the censure decision.
Okay, you're respectfully overruled. The amended language deals with the county chairman taking action, as does the proposed language. It is a change, but it's still consistent with the amended language as your point of order is. We have a second on this. I'll recognize you, James, to
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
carry out your motion.
The reason why I ask everyone to please support this is just so that, because the chairman will be the one executing this action, the CEC will vote on it, the SREC will then, be that second barrier, and they'll vote on it. There's a high threshold, but then the county chair will be the one that is denied ballot access. And so, to protect him, because this is a decision that the Republican Party made as a body, we're protecting him from any losses that may come his way for enacting either the penalties under A1 or A2. I urge everyone to please support this amendment.
Someone to speak against? You're speaking against?
Yes, I am, because I think it doesn't go far enough if you're going to do this. My understanding is technically all your precinct chairs are liable for the deaths of the CEC if it becomes liable for something. So you're leaving a lot of people hanging, so I don't think this thing is complete.
Someone else speaking for? Speaking for American?
Senate District 31, Mary Kay. As county chair, I'm the one that accepts the application on the precinct chairs. I don't mind doing what's asked of me. I do want coverage for implementing what the Republican Party of Texas wants here. I'm in favor of covering my ass, I'll put it that way, making sure that it's paid well. So anyway, I'm in favor of this particular highlighted area.
I'll recognize someone to speak against.
If I'm reading this correctly, and I'm going through the entire thought process, I agree with my colleague. I think every member of the CEC will become accessories to this lawsuit and will be exposed. And as a net result, the cost won't be a couple of $100,000 per suit. We're talking possibly millions when you're talking about just one suit. So when you start exposing an entire CEC to liability for a decision that's made by its body and is given to a county chairman to execute, you are exposing that entire, my reading of it is exposing the entire body. And you do not have a funding mechanism in place to support that kind of activity. If you want to bankrupt the state party, that'll do it. I will vote no.
I have one more for stage one.
You think point of order. We're trying to amend language in B that makes a reference to the things above it, which we have not considered or perfected yet, because we're not starting at the top and working our way down. Is it appropriate for us to be referring to something that we haven't adopted yet?
It is appropriate because you would have to take it together. This also prevents you from dividing it because it refers to itself. So all the language in red is on the table and is on the floor. Are you speaking for?
Point of information.
State your point.
As a question, does not the state provide directors and officers insurance policy to cover liability of the officers of the Republican Party? Or the officers and officials of the Republican Party?
Anything that the state party would provide would not extend to the county chairs. Anyone else wishing to speak for? Are you speaking for this?
Yes.
I don't have an against spot open, only a spot to speak for. State your point.
Mr. Chairman, the question is, if by referencing 44A2,
Microphone.
Dwayne Wright, SC5. By referencing 44A2 in this current spot, does that now open up 44A2 to amendment?
Yes, it would, Mr. Wright. It would open it up for amendment because now the language above is being considered. However, at the moment, the language in yellow is the only thing in consideration. I have one spot to speak for. Debate now being exhausted. All in favor of adopting the highlighted language signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. The nays have it. Language fails.
Mr. Chairman, may I request that we start at the top and work our way down to stuff what a minute? Is that something we have permission to ask?
Well, we can take that, the whole thing is in consideration, so, not really.
Mr. Chair, is it too late to call for division?
Yeah, it's too late to call for division. Do you doubt that a majority,
Just want to see what the numbers are.
well, if you attempt to get people on the record,
Just
but
want to see the
it's
numbers.
past the vote and we've already moved on. The time to call for division was immediately when the vote was announced. Now that I've already taken that important information, thank you.
Point of personal privilege.
What's your privilege?
There's verbiage in here, 2 words that if they're removed that aren't part of this, that might make this acceptable.
That is not a privilege, sir. It's too cold, too hot. I can't see too dark. Is a privilege. Can you see everything just fine?
It's too hot.
The rise of the privilege is not going to do that, sir. If you have a motion to amend, I'll entertain your motion to amend at this time.
It doesn't have to be what's already shown stricken or in red.
That language is what is being considered. If you're going to make a more than a grammatical change to the existing language, it would be out of order.
What would it take to consider something in black that might move this along, sir? Is there anything?
A motion to suspend the rules and submit another amendment that would open up that language to be amended.
If someone else was doing this, I'd want to know what I was doing before I would vote to do so.
Sir, do you have an amendment or a question? I'm giving you all the leeway here. I have nothing on the floor except this amendment. If you don't have a motion or a question, I need to move on.
I have an amendment, Bruce Bishop, SD2. On the 5th line, right there where it says Republican public or party office holder, I'd like to move to strike or party.
Mr. Bishop, that is out of order. Is that?
In that case, I'd like to move to suspend the rules. So we can take this up.
Okay, so if you want to do that, what you need to do is suspend the rules to submit, move to suspend the rule, the submission rules, so that you can submit amendment language that isn't previously noticed.
Yes, sir, I'd like to do that.
Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
You don't have 2/3. All in favor, please raise your hands. I'm in a vote, sir. I'm in a vote, sir. Division's been called. All opposed? You don't have a vote, sir.
Point of order.
State your point.
Motion to reconsider is a majority vote.
That is not a motion to reconsider, sir. That is a motion to suspend the rules, which requires a 2/3 vote. It's a motion to suspend the rules to submit. We're not reconsidering anything. No. Are you, is the chair in order? Chair, thank you.
SB 31, Kevin Hegler, if we could scroll down to the number 2. I should have said there.
section 2 then?
Yes, sir. Everything that is in red, I want to undo. So if it's struck out, I want to include it. If it's included, I want to strike it.
Second. Second. Okay, so what she's wanting to do is put that language back in and strike it.
I also want to strike kids.
Got it close?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Kathy, I'll recommend it.
Yes, sir. We've been doing this for many conventions. The thing that we have always fought over is that it is against the law for the party to require someone to do something in addition to what the election code requires them to do. They have to pay a filing fee and they have to do an application, or they can do a petition in lieu of a filing fee. But the party is not allowed to mandate something in addition to that. And so for a long time, people were just trying to say, don't do this questionnaire at all. And I think after many years of hammering it out, we have finally come to some really great language that we could do, which is the party can mandate our county chairs to give that to the candidate. We could do that. But we cannot mandate a candidate to complete it or do anything with it in order to be on the ballot. So the whole question has been, all these years, all the threats of lawsuit was whether or not we could mandate a questionnaire in order to become a candidate. So the language we had finally hammered out after all these years saying that an office holder can discourage someone from participating in affairs. As my counterpart here, who's the county chair, said, you can't sue me for discouraging. But if you tell somebody they cannot file for office, now they've broken the law. I know we've had discussions about the election code, but I'm pretty sure that's a piece of the election code we cannot ignore. And so that's why I want to return that phrase to the original.
Again?
Yes. Mike Snyder, SB9. I understand Kathy's position here in attempting to parse the word discourage as opposed to being required. But the long and short of it is, the law of unintended consequences still comes to play. Because if the county chairman discourages and a person brings a lawsuit, and they will, it still exposes every member of the CEC to the accessories to that if they vote, and they do that. So they still have legal exposure, and they have legal financial exposure involved, and no coverage. And if we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for one, and possibly millions, you're talking about bankrupting the party, because the party will also be an ancillary party to this suit. So the long and short of it is, there is no financing mechanism that is provided for in this rule to be able to sustain our ability to enforce it without bankrupting not only the CEC and its members, but the party itself. I urge you to vote no.
Mr. Snyder, we're speaking on, as our members, we're speaking on the highlighted language. Yes. Go ahead.
Dwayne Wright, SC5. I speak in favor of this change. The rule is horrible, but this change does make it a little bit more powerful. I don't know that we have established that we can define eligibility to run for office in Texas?
Against?
Yes. John Carr, ST22. I rise to speak against this, and it's really kind of different in the way I'm approaching it, because if we are taking a position that we have separated ourselves from the Texas Elections Code, and I'm not to say that you violate the law or anything, but we're taking a stand that we are an autonomous entity. And if we are an autonomous entity, we can decide who will have the R behind their name on the ballot. So I say that this, if we're going to assert ourselves as an autonomous body, we need to stick with that and decide if the person can't, or I'm sorry, if the person has been censured in accordance with the terms of this provision, then we can say, no, you're not a voter.
Chair recognizes Josh Flynn to speak for.
Okay, I don't really care about the Texas election code. And as far as your comments Snyder's comments were concerned, you can get sued if you kick somebody off the ballot. You're going to get sued if you discourage them from the ballot. So that was where I was kind of confused. Are you for this amendment or not? No. So you would rather them kicked off and have a bigger reason to.
No, I'm against the entire.
Right, but that's not what the amendment was.
Right.
So anyway, without regard to the election code and all this other stuff, my biggest pain here is that we are going to decide in some kind of mechanical, mysterious, political way to keep somebody from getting on the ballot. I believe that the ballot is sacrosanct. I think we should allow anybody that wants to get on the silly Republican ballot on there, and you just beat them in the ballot box. And if the more liberal the person is that gets on the ballot, we have more ammunition to build us up as a conservative party, and we defeat those guys. We don't just kick them off because somebody decides. I am a victim of this. I had a county chair attempt to keep me off the ballot, and whatever reason he found, figured out a political reason, said I was ineligible because I had a lucrative office for $6. And the code didn't even say that. I won in every single court case that they brought on me. I had to spend $20,000 in a silly lawsuit to keep myself, and I won every single time. It didn't matter because there is a nice little political dark room somewhere that somebody's going to manipulate this stuff to keep somebody off the ballot. That's why I'm very passionate about letting anybody that wants to be on the ballot to be on the ballot, and we beat them. We don't sit there and just decide. All right.
Chair recognizes Jim Pickle to speak against.
Yes, I see. Here's the thing. Who are we? Are we just anybody that wants to get on? Or if they violate this, are they going to be ineligible to run for office in the Republican primary? The Texas election code is not Republican and Democrat. It just says in order to be eligible to run for any office, you have to file an application and pay a fee. That, we're not saying that they don't have to do that. They still have to file an application and pay a fee. But to get them R by their name, we control that. Not the election code, not anybody else. We control who we are. That was the earlier thing about there's not a dark, mysterious room. The whole idea of amending 43 was there's a checkbox. It's called a platform. You have to check it. We're not saying you can't get on the ballot. If you don't even tell us what you believe in, you can't get on the ballot. It's like saying, what party are you running for, Jim? You're running for mayor, or you're running for a state rep. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you what my beliefs are. I'm not going to tell you. Black box. Yeah, maybe we can defeat him next time, but now I'm incumbent. I've got a $43 million war chest, and I've been in the Senate for, 4 years. Okay? We've got to keep them out before they get in. And we, as the party, get to decide who gets an R by our name. John Carter's exactly right. That's the whole idea of decoupling from the election code, all of its references. All of that is what we're talking about here. Who are we? And do we get to decide who has an R by their name on our ballot? That's, we're trying to fix 43, exactly. We didn't do it, and we'll do it next time. The point is, the election code does not prohibit us from saying who gets the arm. We can impose any conditions on that we want. And if we say, okay, you don't fulfill our criteria, yeah, we can be sued. You know what? Anybody with $485 can file a lawsuit because that's a filing fee. Doesn't have to be meritorious. There's no grand jury in civil cases. You're good to go to trial. Okay? So we're not going to be able to prevent lawsuits. We might be able to prevent bankrupting our county chairs by letting the party, indemnify them, right? So they don't go bankrupt. It's by enforcing the rules that we're telling them to enforce. But this is a terrible amendment. We need teeth at 44. Please vote it down.
Rachel.
Point of information. Rachel Hoover at C13. Mr. Chair, how many times has Rule 44 been used?
I'm not advised exactly how many times.
Was Rule 44 used against Joe Strauss?
I don't have that data in front of me, therefore I can't answer your question.
Was Rule 44 used against Byron Cook?
Again, I don't have that information, and you're now entering into the debate. Do you have a question that I can answer for you?
I was hoping you could
I don't know, as I answered your first question, I have absolutely no information to tell you honestly exactly what that rule is. Do you have a question?
I have a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Debate is fully exhausted on this.
My motion is to suspend the rules necessary. This is a vital rule to the operation.
Now you're debating. What is it you're trying to do?
My motion is to suspend the rules necessary to extend debate.
Okay, there's a motion to extend debate. Is there a second?
Second.
Now, be clear, you're suspending debate on the highlighted language.
Absolutely.
Okay. There's a motion, a second, to suspend the rules to allow time for more debate. If you do this, the previous question becomes in order. You understand what you're doing? Okay. All in favor, raise your hands. I'm going to avoid a division call. Are you voting?
Sorry, yes.
All opposed? You don't have the votes for it. Question now occurs on the highlighted language. All in favor of adopting the language signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
The nays have it. All the ayes, please raise your hand. Nays? Nays have it.
Sir, I'd like to make an amendment.
Give me just a second. Let me get this language right. Okay, I'll recognize you for your amendment.
Yes, sir. I'd like to motion to strike, replace, all, where it says county chair, replace county with state.
Where at?
Throughout the entire Rule 44. So everywhere where we're mentioning county chair, I want to point out the state chair, and then everywhere where it says candidates, I want to add the word statewide, sort of statewide candidates.
Okay, let's scroll to the top.
Is that a point of order?
Second.
Point of order.
Okay, until I'm clear on what we're doing, I can't rule on your point of order, so give me just a second. The only thing that you can amend at the moment is the red language.
Oh, then everywhere the red language where it says county chair, you would
Scroll from
strike county, put state. Everywhere where it says candidates, you would times and at the state level.
The only place this occurs is in B, so your motion is to strike county chair and add, strike county and add state chair.
Yes, sir.
And I don't see the word candidate in the second paragraph. Okay, so your motion effectively is to strike county and B and replace it with state. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Point of order.
State your point.
I would move that it's not germane. Substance of the rule is identification of the state party and county chairman. This would render identification of state chairman by the state party, which would already, one, it's moved, but two, is not related to the identification or the provision of an offense to a county chairman. Is that order not germane?
Thank you for the summation, Counselor. Your point of order is well taken and sustained. Moving on. The amendment is now back on the floor. Let's get back on track. The amendment's now on the floor. We've had, the main motion has only had actually for speakers. I'm looking for someone to speak against the red language. I saw Dwayne Wright first.
Dwayne Wright, SC5. The red language is hanging the county chair out as a sacrificial lamb. Part of what a county chair's job is to get people out to vote, to ensure them that even though the Democrats cheated, that it's okay to vote, and we're going to protect your vote, and we're going to do everything we can to have election integrity, and yet we're going to possibly kick them out because we don't agree with something, or we're going to kick out the elected official that these people all showed out for. So I'm against the language in red because it is part and parcel of the issue of this entire work.
Anyone wishing to speak for? James.
We have tried to introduce language to protect the county chair, but people voted that language down. But we need to hold incumbents accountable. This is bigger than the Republican Party of Texas. This is the country, and it's shift to the left, and the people that are helping to do it are Republicans. People who have no regard for the Constitution, our rights, and will say whatever they want to keep in power. They have the love of money in their heart, and they have forsaken all other principles that perhaps at one time they held dear, and the only thing they care about is control, power, and money. With this Rule 44 amendment, we finally assert that, like we have control over who runs with the magic R. The R has meaning because we, the grassroots, hold them accountable, and we deny those who are faithless after a vigorous process where first the CEC votes with a high threshold, and then the SRAC considers what the CEC did and validates that. So they have considered the cost, and they have decided, even after considering, that this is necessary. I am so proud that the Republican Party of Texas censured Joe Strauss. Great job. They should have done it sooner. There are senators in D.C. from Texas giving away our gun rights. After we lose our gun rights, what else are we going to lose? This is, the direction of our country is perilous unless we take action. And this is an opportunity for everyone here to do so. Grassroots, most of them, I believe, clearly want this and expect us to put teeth into Rule 44. This is the reason, it's been great several days, but this is the reason why I asked to be on the Rules Committee, so that I could help the Republican Party hold incumbents to a standard. I encourage everyone to vote for it.
Chair recognizes Kathy Daigle to speak against.
As Steve, someone against. These amendments have absolutely no teeth at all. All this requires someone to do is to complete a questionnaire and turn it in. If they say they do not agree with every single plank of our platform, you can't censure them, you can't do anything to them. All they have to do is turn in a piece of paper to you. You're not saying that they have to agree with a certain percent of our planks or what. You're just saying, fill it out, turn it in, and now there's nothing you can do about the censure. This has no teeth at all whatsoever.
Speak for?
Yes.
Scott's been trying to lead the floor. Are you speaking for?
Yes. So first,
Sir? I saw him first, sir. I didn't see him.
but hopefully I make a point you were going to. I'm confused about the point regarding the questionnaire because we're in Rule 44, which involves the censure process. But I think at the end of the day, any group, whether it's a party, a company, a private organization, a club, has to have some way of defining who its members are. It can't be imposed on them by some outside entity. And I can't imagine someone telling Abraham Lincoln at the founding of the Republican Party that he has to accept candidates running as Republicans who are pro-slavery. I just can't imagine it. It's kind of shocking to me that something like this hasn't existed from the very beginning. But at the end of the day, we are never removing ballot access from anybody. You can get on the ballot. You just can't call yourself a Republican if they say you can't. And so if the process has been gone through, you can run as an independent, you can run as a Democrat, you can run as a Sand Party or a Libertarian or anything you want. You can even make a party of your own. But the idea that we cannot have any kind of oversight whatsoever is just ridiculous to me. And so I think something like this has to exist for extreme situations.
The chair recognizes Rachel Hooper to speak against.
Rachel Hooper, SC 13. I thought I was team earlier, but I'm going to have to get crazy here. Are you crazy? Declaring that the named office holder is not eligible to file to run for any office. This rule, if adopted, would encourage filing people, the county chairs, who wants to be a county chair these days, or the state chair, to declare that somebody filing for governor, for example, is not eligible to run for office. What do you think that candidate would do next? File a lawsuit. Who's going to pay for that lawsuit? This is outrageous that this is even being considered. I think that I don't know why we voted down the rule as is. Rule 44 was very strong. It has been, I knew the answers to the points of information I asked. It's been used. It was used against Joe Strauss. Where is he today? Is he in office? It was used against Byron Cook. Where is he today? Is he in office? It works. It has teeth. Because these people who were censured are not in office today because of y'all, actually. Do not do this. This is crazy and will cost us our party. Please, I implore you to not do this.
Debate being exhausted on this amendment. All in favor of adoption of the language in red, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. The nays have it. Of course, you're going to call division. All in favor, raise your hands. Wait. I'm going to vote here. All opposed? The nays have it. The amendment fails. Chair recognizes Justin Nichols for an amendment. You pre-filed an amendment?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I apologize.
Take your conversations outside, please. I cannot hear.
Mr. Chairman, I would offer the amendment as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Chair recognizes Justin Nichols to lay out his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only substantive part that I've proposed is providing at least some real opportunity for the alleged violator or office holder to appear with 7 days notice. That's relatively short notice anyway, and clarify that instead of an invitation, they're given an actual opportunity to appear before the body that would be deciding whether or not to ultimately censure them. The second part of the amendment is to define the term office holder as used in this rule to exclude basically any candidate or any office holder of judicial office. This comports with, I believe it was a portion of Rule 43 regarding the questionnaires that judicial candidates are exempt from having to do that, and there is a reason for it. Judicial candidates, one, our judiciary is intended to be independent, and a judge, regardless of their party, should be able to make a decision based on the case before them, not based on a party principle, and that decision should be reviewed through the normal appellate means as provided by law. So I do not think it is appropriate to open up judicial office holders to a censure procedure when there is an adequate remedy at law to reverse an illegal decision that they made. Secondly, and this is sort of what I'm going to refer to as kind of the Bandera rule. I don't know if all the members received a copy, but in Bandera County, a county chair did make the errant decision to endorse in a county judge's race using her official capacity. No one doubts that that was inappropriate, and I told her so. But what happened was, as a 6-member county executive committee got together, passed, they claim that she didn't have notice. That's not the issue I'm arguing. But they passed a articles of censure or something to that effect, effectively removing or purporting to remove the county chair from office using the censure procedures under Rule 44. I agree with the impassioned speech of my colleague from Senate District 13 that 44 works. It has worked, and I'm not aware really of any instances in which it was tried and failed, and that candidate is somehow succeeding overwhelmingly when they shouldn't. But the truth is, there has been a lot of discussion throughout.
Point of order. This is debate.
He's speaking for his amendment, sir.
Okay.
Yes, it has.
About who? Nobody over here caught that, sir.
Okay. I recognized him to speak for his amendment. Thank you. Please continue, but do wrap it up.
So I think it is appropriate to clarify that nothing in this rule authorizes removal from office, although I did include that this rule does not limit removal from office under any other rule or other rule of law. I think there's the statutory grounds to do that. So I think that this actually strengthens Rule 44 by minimizing the challenge, giving opportunity, and clarifies that censure is the only option. Removal from office is not a 44 remedy.
Someone wishing to speak against? Chair recognizes Senate District 12.
SD 12. I'd like to propose an amendment to the language.
Okay, state your amendment.
This last paragraph, I propose to remove the starting with nothing down to the second line of the comma after likewise, so that we just read nothing within this rule shall serve to limit the removal of a public or party office holder under other rule or law. You want to take out the first half of that sentence. Keep going. And likewise come out also in the non-public. And then the end on nothing will be capitalized.
Is that your amendment?
Yes, sir, but I capitalized nothing. The word that stuff.
Okay, is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second.
I have an amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Let me get the language back here. Okay. State your amendment.
My amendment would be on the first line to strike party. Or party, I'm sorry. Where it says, term of the office holder as used as rule shall mean a holder of public, strike, or party office. Well, no, strike office, I'm sorry, but just or party. And then to remain congruent with that, in the second section where it says nothing of this rule shall be construed to authorize the removal of a public, once again, strike through or party. That's my language. Oh, I'm sorry, at this point. Thank you.
Is that the language you're after?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
I recognize you to speak on your amendment.
Once again, in 8K, we spent quite a bit of time figuring out how we can hammer precinct chairs and party chairs. This right here basically narrows the scope of this to the public officials that everybody's so disenchanted with. So why would we have two rules that could cause issues for county chairs? We've got 8K, we have methods for removal there. This right here would remove that, the county chairs and precinct chairs from 44.
You speaking against?
Yes.
Okay.
Rachel Hooper, SD 13. The language, if we go to the top of Rule 44, says public or party office holder. So just by making those strikes doesn't affect this rule like you want it to. So I'm against your strikes because it doesn't do what you want it to.
Anyone else for or against?
Against.
Looking for a for.
I agree with the idea that because party office holders are dealt with in section 8K, there is already an existing process for moving for their removal that is quite similar to the censure process. So I don't think it makes sense to also include them in the censure process as well, which is actually weaker than what already exists for party officials. I think the censure process should be about actions on platform and priorities and principles. And so by public officials who are kind of outside the party organization system. One side is about leadership and then one side is about public officials. And so I think it would also probably be, after this is dispensed with, if the body is favorable to it, then we could suspend the rules to allow for that other change on line 16A. But it's, that, we can't do that in this motion. Going forward, we could.
Recognize you to speak against, right?
Range out to 27. I think that 44 censure and 8K is removal, and they should remain distinct. Could we scroll down, please? So this is, as you mentioned, Scott, an opportunity for someone to get a censure without having to be removed completely. It's a lesser punishment because 8K would be an immediate removal, and this would be for government election to finish off your term. You just cannot run again or something like that, right? But it would also keep it consistent with what Ms. Hooper said, that this entire thing is about public and party officers. So we should keep one about removal and one about censure. So I oppose this amendment.
Score. Chair recognizes Grace Jones.
Grace Jones, SD20. So, kind of like what Scott was saying, I think we could make another motion after this to make it consistent. But if you look at the consequences of a censure, those don't really even make sense for especially a county chair. That like the party already doesn't expend funds on you to help you get away. In fact, if they did, it would be a conflict. The party can't spend funds to get a county chair elected or precinct chair because it's an intra-party contest. So really, it's kind of nonsensical to have to even implement those penalties. It doesn't make sense. It's not a penalty for a party officer. So later we can fix that, go ahead and vote for this, and then later we can move to suspend the rules and fix the other part. So it makes sense.
You against?
Against, yes, sir. SD21, Kathy Haler. You maybe remember my good for the goose, good for the gander rule before. 8K only deals with county chairs and precinct chairs. And this is all about public offices. So we've only left one untouchable, and that would be the state party chair, who is a party officer. So I'm speaking against this because I think somewhere we've got to get everybody within our own party, and this would knock that out.
Debate being exhausted, all in favor of adopting the highlighted language signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Nay. The nays have it. The motion fails.
It's all good. Oh, no, come on.
It's all gone. I'm going to say it. We're drinking heavily wine.
28 more minutes. Rest of the schedule.
Chair recognizes Rachel Hoover.
Motion to amend.
Stage pleasure.
Please spell office holder correctly and make it one word, please. We're not the holder officers. We're not that kind of party.
That would be the scope of our
We don't hold
Okay, I didn't know that all.
Just a point of information or a point of privilege. If without objection, I said Court of Appeal, it should be Court of Appeals, plural. Or courts, oh, then I got it wrong again.
I think we can fix that without objection.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
further action on it?
can I make a motion?
You do what you want.
All right, I move that we suspend the rules of debate to allow for motions of previous question again.
Okay, so you want to move to suspend the rules
to reopen motions for previous question.
Okay, so what you're wanting to do is make a motion to suspend the rules and to suspend the MacGyver rule and reinstitute the previous question.
What you said.
Okay, so then it would negate the 3, 4, and 3 against, and then we would go back into open debate back and forth until the question's called.
Yes.
That's what you want to do. Okay, is there a second? Second. All in favor, raise your hands. You're going to call the division. All in favor, raise your hands. I mean, you don't have votes. Chair recognizes Kathy Hager.
SD21. If we can scroll up, before we got to 1 and 2, not less than 7 days, I would like to change that to 14 days, because when someone's been notified.
It's a motion to strike 7 and change it to 14. Is there a second? Second. Now recognize you.
Is there just with something this big and that so many arrangements to be made, I just feel like if somebody needs to defend themselves against censure or prepare to censure somebody, that we need sufficient time for the notice.
That's good. Anyone want to speak against? Is there objection to adopting the number 14? Hearing none, it's adopted. Any other further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of adopting the language signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Chair recognizes Kathy Hagler for an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, there are extensive changes to the language.
No kidding.
And I'd like to just take a sentence at a time if we could. And I will start by doing the very first one that's underlined. Notice of a meeting to consider censure must be served to every member of the county or district executive committee, including the chairman, no less than, and I'm going to change that to 14 days right now, before the scheduled meeting.
What are you asking me to do as far as staging? You're going.
Yes, sir, I'm asking for division, so we can just handle these one at a time.
Okay, is there objection to handling these one at a time? Hearing none. All right. Highlight what you.
Mr. Chair, point of information.
State your point.
Is there any way the two amendments that we have adopted to Rule 44 are one-line things? Can we take a moment to bring those changes into this in some manner?
How long do you think that's going to take you?
It'll take me 2 minutes.
Let's stand easy for 5 minutes.
Members, while it's fresh on my mind, when we adjourn this evening, take everything with you. This room turns into a caucus room tomorrow, and then turns back into a room for the permanent committee. So make sure, I don't know, they're not going to rearrange anything, I don't think, but at least take all your stuff, don't leave anything here. And probably take your name tag with you too. Take your chargers, take your phone chargers, don't leave your power cords. Take your chair, the table, take a TV, take a projector, you can get it, whatever. It's not going to be here probably when you get back. Okay. Edward is going to run the computer here for us pretty quick. So he's taken previously adopted language and turned it purple. Maybe his favorite color, I don't know. Purple. He just picked one.
Got a lot of red.
So purple's already been adopted, and then we're going to work through Kathy's language. She's presenting it one section at a time. As soon as we get up to it. Okay, let's highlight what you're moving at the moment. Okay, that's your motion? Is there a second? If there's a second, you've got to speak up. I can't. Second. Okay. There's a second. Kathy, I'll recognize you to speak on your motion.
This won't take long. The Bandera letter that we got said that the chairman was not even invited to the censure meeting. So this, and some of the precinct chairs weren't invited. So this is just to make sure that if there's a meeting about censure, that every single member of the committee and the chair is given notice 14 days before the meeting.
Speak against? Anyone to speak against?
I'm going to ask members to please speak directly into the mic. I am working 2 jobs at the moment just to try and make this easy for all of us. I'm trying to listen to debate and make sure that we have everything highlighted so that everybody can follow. So please speak loudly. Please refrain from talking. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just the underline.
Just the underlying language is all we're considering. Anyone to speak against? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting it? Are you trying to get my attention? I want you to be able to debate it.
One privilege, SD3, I can't read purple. Can we do something on color?
I'm sure we can.
I'm sorry.
If you can't read it, it's been adopted already.
I still would like to read it.
Give me a moment. Yeah, before you change color, maybe just enlarging it will fix it. Just zoom out.
Can you see it now? Does that help?
Much bigger, and that helps too. Yeah.
Much bigger, that helps. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So you may have to just yell up there. I can't see the other times. Because you got the Grace syndrome. Okay. All in favor of adopting the bold language, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The language is adopted. Chair recognizes Kathy Hagler for her next amendment.
So the next sentence says I'm removing county or senatorial district convention or and then going to where a county or district executive committee must serve notice to the office holder by certified mail no less than 14 days before the scheduled meeting.
Is there a second?
10 to 14.
Second.
Kathy, I'll recognize you.
Yes, sir. The 10 should say 14. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. So here's my reasoning. You have to have a meeting to decide if you're going to censure someone as a body. No. Oh, yeah. It should say not less than 14. I'm sorry. Thank you. So you meet as a body, you decide if you're going to censure, and then you have to provide your 14 days notice so that you can have the meeting. You never have 2 precinct conventions or county conventions or SD conventions. It only happens once every 2 years. So it's not possible to serve someone notice if you've decided something at a county or senatorial district convention. So that's why I'm removing those and leaving that in a county executive committee or a district executive committee, you would have a meeting, decide the censure, you would serve notice, and you would be able to meet.
Anyone wishing to speak against? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the language signify by saying aye. I'm going to vote, sir. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. The language is adopted. Are you serious?
Yes, sir.
All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Kathy to lay out her amendment.
Okay, the next sentence, the office holder shall be invited to appear and be provided time to speak before, again, I did the same thing we did in the last sentence, a county or senatorial convention is being deleted. They will be invited and provided time to speak before the county or district executive committee. So that's basically the same thing as before, but require the invitation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anyone wishing to speak against?
Hold it.
Actually, I recognize you to speak on your amendment. Okay. Anyone wishing to speak against?
Question to the author.
State the question.
When you're stating, Kathy, a minimum of 10 minutes to speak, what is the time limit? Is there a time limit for how long they can speak?
No, sir, I didn't put that in there. It's a great idea for an amendment, but
Well, I don't want that.
Speaking against SC 23.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
State the point.
Mark Russellson, District 30. My question is that as this begins, it states that a meeting to consider censure and the notice that must go out. How is it determined that there is to be a notice to consider censure?
So that's not a point of order. That's just a question.
Yeah, it's a question made for me. Sorry.
Thank you. Would you like to address that? Let's let Kathy address his request for information.
so the initial meeting where you are voting as a body to censure someone would not require any notice, but then you're going to give notice to the person you're censuring for the second meeting because you're going to be considering censure at that meeting.
First meeting starts the action, then notice, then the next meeting is the action. Does that answer your question, sir?
That answers the question I asked, yes.
Thank you.
I speak against this. The previous vote just took out the ability of a senatorial district convention from doing a censure. And now we're doing it again. We're getting rid of the ability for a senatorial convention to do a censure. I was on this rules committee when we put that in. The 14 days, that is the new language. That wasn't there. So that can't be an argument against, you can't have a censure in your SC convention because you can't give notice. So I strongly am against this language, and I would urge this body to reconsider the previous vote where we didn't have time to have debate.
Anyone wishing to speak for? All in favor of adopting the language, signify, raise your hands. All opposed? The ayes have it, the language is adopted. Chair recognizes Kathy Hager for our next amendment.
By a 2/3 vote of the present and voting, but in no case by less than a majority of the, I'm striking CEC and instead putting in county or district executive committee in full, a resolution censuring a Republican Party, Republican public or party office holder representing all or portion of that county or district must document 3 or more actions taken during the current biennium in opposition to the core principles, and the rest of the sentence is all untouched. So really, the only thing that I'm changing is, this says CEC, and in the previous language, we were talking about not only the county executive committee, but the district executive committee, and the district executive committee was left out in the original language. So I'm putting that back in. And then I'm also adding the words, they must document what the 3 actions were that violate the core principles.
Really let me get a second for that.
I am so sorry.
We've got a second. I recognize you as the floor debater. There's a debate begins.
Point of information.
State point.
What is a DEC?
It's the district executive committee.
Does that differ from a senatorial district, or is that the same?
No, is it like if you're in let's say you're against a state senator who's in 28 counties, the district executive committee is when the 28 counties meet together as a district executive committee. It's in that old sticky Texas election code that we don't like to talk about.
And that differs from a senatorial district?
Yes, sir. So your county district is your county only. Your senatorial district could have a few different counties in it, but let's just say you're censuring a state representative. You may be in part one senatorial district, part in another senatorial district, half of the county. It's only the constituents of that person's district constituted district executive.
Mr. Bishop, I have a rep that encompasses 7 counties, and we have a 1 county inside Lubbock. So that rep is not part of that one House district. So when there's action like a ballot replacement, the members in that one district don't get to participate in the rest of the county business. So that becomes a district executive committee for the purposes of ballot replacement because it spans more than 1 county. You guys in the big cities don't need to deal with this very often.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, anyone to speak against all the great language there? Okay, great language. Are you ready for the question? All in favor of adoption, raise your hands. All opposed? The ayes have it, the language is adopted. What's your next amendment? Let me get a second on this.
Sentence at a time. Such a resolution may include a request to the SREC, and then I'm striking, or any state convention held prior to the start of a filing period of the Republican primary election while these rules were in effect. So going back to what we're keeping, that the named named office holder be penalized.
Second.
Okay, so again, this is the same thing about if there's a convention, one body, let's say if we had a state convention where we censured somebody, we would have to vote to censure, give them notice, and the next time we would meet would be 2 years later, and that's a different body. So that's why we are taking out state convention. You have to serve prior notice to the person you're censuring.
Speak again.
You have to give them notice because you just put notice in there. We fought very hard to get state convention to have the ability to censor, and you are undoing hard work that grassroots have done over the years. I want you to know that I'm going to vote against every single one of this. There's no word to describe what this is undoing.
Anyone else to speak for or against? Mr. Bishop?
Against?
We've already got an against. For would be in order. Is anyone else?
For or against?
I did, and I apologize.
In case there's a for.
I apologize. Is anyone wishing to speak for?
If we have a for, I want to be against.
Okay. Anyone else for? All in favor of adoption of this language, please raise your hand. All opposed? Let me have the ayes again one more time. There being 13 and 13, the motion fails.
So, Mr. Chairman, that it would just take the strikeouts and my changes out and leave the original numbers correct.
That's correct.
Just takes the check out.
Chair recognizes you for your next amendment.
Okay, and then the next one is referring to the previous sentence about requesting the office holder to be penalized. If such a request is included after notice of invitation to the office holder to appear and be provided time to speak speak before the full SREC, so I'm inserting full, or the state convention in conformity with the request, the delegates of the state convention by majority, I'm striking all of this language here, by 2/3 vote, or the state Republican Executive Committee, I just changed the SREC, by a 3/5 vote of the full membership, may vote to concur with the resolution of censure and then I struck out impose one or both of the following penalties. And if you'll see below, I'm offering to keep one and to strike one. That's why it says I'm taking out one of those. That may take a minute to
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. State your point.
It's 11 o'clock.
It is. What's your point of order? We were supposed to be, we're not supposed to be adjourned at 11. We have a schedule of 11. We haven't lost the room. I'm not out of order as we're in the meeting.
But no, I thought we got it.
Once we leave, this committee adjourns sine die. So we have the room at the moment. Nobody's going to come in here and measure us out. Should this committee want to continue its business?
Point of order.
You can't call a motion. State your point.
According to rule number 11 in our temporary committee rules of procedure, the committee will enter into a formal work session for the purpose of perfecting its report on all proposed amendments at 11 a.m. Wednesday, June 15th, and will adjourn no later than 10:59 p.m.
Your point of order is well taken and sustained. This committee is adjourned.
Point of